For me, I think the contact's on the top of the foot.
I think he catches him on the side of the ankle first. The first impact is more that Achilles area.
Achilles on the shin.
All right, I'm seeing initial contact on the arm. It's moving down the Nissan Maximus area, down to the Bermuda Triangle. Yeah, all right, check complete. That's a relegation for Southampton. By early February of this season, VAR had made 13 major mistakes, which may seem like a lot, because it is, and yet this is actually an improvement compared to last season, when VAR had made 20 mistakes by the same point. Now, I don't want to keep talking about the refs. It's annoying and everyone hates it, and I especially don't want to be another Arsenal fan thinking the refs are out to get us, when, let's be real, they're out to get everyone. But virtually every single week, there's a blatantly wrong call, or lack of a call, and the conversation starts again. This time, it's about VAR specifically, but ironically, the biggest problem isn't VAR itself, but rather how it's being used and the people using it. Now, VAR is only supposed to be used when the on-field referee misses something on the pitch or makes a call that is incorrect, to the point that the event is a quote-unquote clear and obvious error, or is a serious missed incident. Now, in theory, this is a good thing, right? A linesman might miss an offside player during a goal, a referee may be on the opposite side of a player getting tackled and miss a high boot. We understand these things can happen, so VAR is supposed to fix these things from happening. But unfortunately, referees, at least in the Premier League, are starting to become too reliant on the system, and the cracks, both in the referees' abilities and VAR itself, are starting to show. It seems as though referees have this current thought of VAR can help me when they make certain calls, and even former referees think the same thing. Because in the back of a referee's mind that VAR can overturn things, softer penalties may be called, or more obvious penalties won't be. And a good example is the Arsenal versus Everton penalty. Now, in this situation, Harrison does initiate the contact first, but both players are going at it equally, and in that sense, it's 50-50. Not really because it could go either way for a foul, but in the sense that both players are doing equal things while staying just under the line of a foul. Now, in my opinion, football is a contact sport. Obviously, you can't just go and hit anyone, but there's going to be times where players are touched or bumped, and it's not going to be a foul. And in this case, with both players equally challenging each other and the ball while staying under the line of a foul, no foul should be called on anyone. However, VAR's language is quote-unquote, if a clear and obvious mistake is made, then it will be overturned. In this case, there is contact from Lewis Skelly. Again, both players, but Lewis Skelly specifically. So it can't necessarily be overturned because a clear and obvious error would mean no contact whatsoever, which is very fucking stupid, Jesus Christ. Now, part of a referee's over-reliance on VAR has them thinking that if they get called to the monitor, it needs to be overturned. Halfway through the 23-24 season, 54 of the 55 times that a referee was called to the monitor, a call was overturned. And I understand why it may be overturned majority of the time, but sticking with the original call on one occasion is not enough. Now, I get that I may be seen as biased because, oh, I'm an Arsenal fan complaining about a call going against Arsenal, but I understand that these calls go against everyone in the league. So to show that I'm impartial, we're going to take a look at a penalty that West Ham got against Manchester United to show that it's not just Arsenal, it's everyone. Late in the match, with the score level, there was a penalty shout as Danny Ings fell to the ground screaming like a soldier in the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. The referee did not award the penalty and waved play on. However, VAR intervened and told the ref to look at the monitor, and after a few minutes, he awarded a penalty, West Ham scored and won, and then Ten Hag was sacked less than 24 hours later. Now, is it funny to me that United lost? Obviously, okay? It will literally always be funny when United loses. But looking at this objectively, I don't think this should have been called against Sorry about that. I don't think that this was a penalty against Manchester. Okay. You got this. Come on. You got this. Okay, come on. It was not a penalty against
I don't think this was a penalty against Manchester United.
Here's the thing, both players are going for the ball with equal force, with their legs at the same height and their feet at the same height. De Ligt didn't barge into the back of Ings or stamp down on him with his studs. It was a 50-50 ball that both of them missed. What do you mean there's more contact from De Ligt? Like, what does that mean? You're making me defend Manchester United. Jesus Christ. The initial call was actually the correct one, but again, because VAR intervened and told the ref to look at the monitor, he thought he had made a major mistake. He overturned his correct initial call, and it resulted in a loss for United and caused a man to lose his job. He was probably going to get sacked anyway, but still, a terrible way to go. Let's not forget that referees have sometimes just completely misused VAR, or just not used it at all when necessary. Lines were not drawn during a review of a Brentford goal and an offside call was missed. Poor communication resulted in a clearly onside Liverpool player being called off. João Pedro threw an elbow at a player and nothing was looked at. Guimarães actually hits Jorginho in the head and nothing was looked at. In those cases, VAR was there to help, but wasn't used correctly, or somehow was used and used correctly, and still an incorrect decision was made. Seriously, well done, boys. Good process. Now, I know I just spent the last few minutes complaining about refs rather than VAR when the video is about VAR, but a few things can be true at once. One is that yes, Premier League refs need to be better and that they need to get better at using VAR, but the other thing that's also true is that I would not want to be a ref. That sounds awful. Being a ref would suck and it sounds so goddamn difficult. Like, good God, I get banter and some heat being breathed down on you, but having threats to you and your family is just a tad too far. So with that in mind, we need to take a look at VAR, some of its rules and some of its processes, because I think if it's cleaned up a bit, it will actually help take pressure off the refs, and I do think that they would, at least hopefully, do a better job. For instance, being able to review a second yellow card should be allowed, as it's changing the game just like a straight red card would. Again, refs are human and make mistakes, so if a player gets a second yellow for something that's not card worthy, it should be allowed to be reviewed, similar to if a player doesn't get a second yellow card when it is deserved. In each of these instances, the ref made a mistake but was not allowed to correct it. Yes, you can argue that refs should be better, which is absolutely true, especially in the Premier League. But as I said before, multiple things can be true at once. Refs can be better, and VAR's rules can be better. So what can we do when we have refs that don't seem up to scratch and a flawed system to go with it? Well, one of the things that I've noticed is that it seems like refs don't really value their initial call at least as much as they should. Again, highlighting their over-reliance on VAR. It seems like a lot of these calls have black and white thinking involved when a lot of it is obviously gray and subjective. So I think one thing that could help would be to take a page out of the American football playbook and implement a decision called the play stands, at least more often than it's currently being used. Now, in American football, when a play is being reviewed, there are 3 outcomes, 2 of which are just like the calls that you see in the Premier League, which are seeing an initial decision being confirmed as correct, or the initial decision being overturned because video evidence shows that it was wrong. The third decision in American football is letting the play stand. This basically means that there was not enough evidence to overturn the initial decision. That doesn't mean it's 100% correct, but it can't be proven otherwise. For example, during this Bournemouth goal, the ball comes off of Utara's shoulder or arm, and initially the goal was given. When looking at the replay, it's hard to tell if the ball struck the player's arm below the sleeve or on the sleeve, which is the indicator of a handball. So the initial call on the field would stand as a goal rather than being confirmed as a goal. Now, can you say this was 100% the correct decision? Not necessarily, but you can't say that it was 100% wrong either. So the initial call on the field is technically the correct one, and it would be wrong to overturn it. So it shouldn't surprise you that they did overturn it, obviously. I mean, they also said this clothesline from Jolinton was a yellow card and not serious foul play, much like how the Black Knight from Monty Python just got a scratch. You know, it's a bit of an understatement. Now, letting the play stand is actually implied for VAR, and it has been used a handful of times, like in this disallowed Holland goal, which ironically should have been allowed because video evidence showed no handball, again suggesting it's more so the referee's fault and not the system, but again, here we are. However, letting the play stand is not exactly spelled out, so VAR and its language needs to be cleaned up a bit. Having the clear and obvious error language makes us think that the call is 100% correct or 100% incorrect. Besides something like offside, that type of black and white decision making doesn't exist in this sport, and again, it puts extra pressure on the referees. So perhaps saying sufficient evidence within the context of the match, or something similar, would give a little more leeway and allow the play stands call to be used more often. However, we the fans wouldn't necessarily know if a call is confirmed or if it just stood. So I think another way for VAR to improve would be for the referees to address the crowd after a major VAR decision. That way, they can express if a call was too tight to overturn, or if they are indeed confirming that original call. There would be more transparency, more help for the refs, and add in a bit more common sense to the game, even though Dermot Gallagher would disagree about that. Lastly, as I said before, there needs to be some changes to what's reviewable, namely the fact that a second yellow card resulting in a red can't be reviewed, even though it's affecting the game just as much as a straight red. Now look, I don't like complaining about the refs. Literally no one does, okay? No one wants their fan base to be known as the fan base that complains about referees. I know that better than anyone else as an Arsenal fan. And while the ref ability in the Premier League needs to improve, so does VAR, its rules, and its transparency and language, because let's be real, the people who can't tell the difference between someone's shin and their Achilles need all the help that they can get.